I didn't react when I found them. And that's the part people don't understand. They think the worst moment is the moment you see it. It's not. The worst moment is when you realize you already knew before you opened the door, before you saw anything. There was a part of you that had already accepted the truth. Have you ever had that feeling? When something is wrong and you keep telling yourself it's nothing because the alternative would destroy everything you built? That day I wasn't supposed to come home early. I had a meeting, a full afternoon planned, but Emma's school called. Fever, nothing serious, just one of those small interruptions that life throws at you. And somehow, that small interruption led me to the one moment that changed everything. The house was quiet, but not peaceful quiet. Controlled quiet. The kind of silence that exists when people are trying not to be heard. I remember standing at the bottom of the stairs, not moving, because something inside me already knew what was waiting upstairs. Every step felt heavier than it should have, like my body was trying to slow me down, like it knew. Once I opened that door, there was no going back. And when I did, I didn't scream. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even step inside. I just looked. Long enough to understand, not long enough to react. Her hair against my pillow, his hand on her skin, the way he froze. And she didn't. That was the detail that stayed with me. He panicked. She didn't. She looked at me like this wasn't the first time. Just the first time I caught up. I closed the door and I walked downstairs, made tea, sat at the table and waited. People think strength is loud. It's not. Sometimes it looks like pouring hot water into a cup while your entire life is collapsing upstairs. When he came down, he started talking immediately. Excuses, confusion, blame. It didn't mean anything. It just happened. She pursued me. Have you noticed how people always reduce their choices when they're about to lose control of the consequences? I only asked one question. Does my mother know? And when he said no, I understood everything. Not just what they did, but how far they thought they could go, without consequences. I told him to leave, not forever, not dramatically, just don't be here when Emma gets home. And in that moment, I wasn't a wife anymore. I was something else, something much more focused. The next few weeks, I didn't fall apart. I didn't confront her. I didn't tell anyone. I prepared, quietly, carefully, completely. I met with a lawyer, opened a separate account, arranged a place to stay, started documenting everything. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed clarity. Because once you see the truth, you have two choices. Pretend you didn't, or prepare for what comes next. And then there was the party. My mother's 75th birthday. Perfect on the surface. Lights, music, family, everything exactly how it should be. And underneath that, everything was already broken. I watched her walk in. Vivian, late, confident, radiant, like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just destroyed something that took me years to build. Have you ever seen someone walk into a room like they already won? That's what it felt like. I didn't approach her. I didn't look at her for too long, because I already knew this wasn't over. People like that don't stop quietly. They escalate. And she did. It started with a speech, too loud, too forced, too intentional, gratitude, family, love, and then him, Marcus. She mentioned him like a joke at first, then like a statement, then like a claim, and then she said it, out loud, in front of everyone. I'm in love with him. We've been having an affair for 6 months. The room didn't react immediately, because shock takes a second. And in that second, everyone looked at me, waiting for a reaction, for a breakdown. for something they could understand. But I didn't give them that. Because this wasn't the moment I lost control. This was the moment I used it. And then she did something worse, something I hadn't fully prepared for. She turned to Emma, my daughter, 4 years old, sitting there, eating cake, trusting everyone in that room. And Vivian knelt down, smiling, like she was about to tell her a secret. "You're adopted," she said. "Your mommy isn't your real mommy." Time didn't slow down. It stopped. I saw Emma's face change, not understanding the words, but understanding the tone. Children always do. That was the moment. Not when I found out, not when she confessed, but when she chose to hurt my child. That's when something inside me became absolute. I stood up, knocked the chair back, and for the first time that night, everyone went silent. I didn't look at Vivian first. I looked at Emma, kneeling down, taking her hand, grounding her, up before I said anything else. "I am your mother," I told her, completely, always. That doesn't change. And only after she nodded, only after she held on to me, did I stand back up. And then I spoke. Not loudly, not emotionally, clearly. "I think it's time everyone understands what's actually happening." And then I told the truth. All of it. The money, the manipulation, the affair, the lies, the plan. Every piece of it. Structured, precise, impossible to deny. I showed them proof, not to destroy her, but to remove any space for doubt. Because doubt is where people hide. And once that was gone, everything else followed. She didn't argue. She couldn't. Because for the first time, she wasn't controlling the story. She left, and the room shifted. People didn't know where to look. Because the narrative they expected had just collapsed. And me? I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt finished. Because this was never about winning. It was about ending something that should have ended a long time ago. We left early. Emma fell asleep in the car, holding onto my hand like nothing else mattered. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't lose everything. I removed what didn't belong. The next morning, things started falling into place. Legally, financially, reality catching up to choices, but none of that mattered as much as this. Emma was safe. And I was clear. Months passed. Life rebuilt itself, not the same, better. And one day, I saw them again, and I waited. To feel something, I didn't. And that's when I knew I was free. Because freedom isn't when they understand what they did. It's when you no longer need them to. So if you're listening to this, and something in your life feels wrong, but you keep explaining it away, hoping it will fix itself, it won't. The moment you see clearly is the moment everything changes. Not because the world changes, but because you do. And once you do, you stop asking for permission. You stop waiting for validation. You stop explaining yourself to people who already decided not to understand you. And that's when your life actually begins. That's what makes it worse. Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual, just a message asking me to pick her up early. No explanation. And if you've ever had that feeling, where something is wrong, but no one says it out loud, you already know what it feels like to walk into a situation that's already been decided without you. I opened the door, and I didn't see my daughter first. I saw what was left behind. Her things weren't just messy, they were scattered with intention. Backpack ripped open, pages torn clean through. Her small world, rearranged like evidence in a trial she didn't know she was in. That's when I knew. This wasn't about an accident, this was about a message. She broke my laptop. That's what I was told. No context, no explanation, just a number attached to it, a price. Have you ever noticed how quickly people assign value to objects and reduce people to consequences? That's what this felt like. I went upstairs, and what I saw is something I'll never forget. She was sitting on the floor, not crying loudly, not hiding, trying to fix things, carefully pressing torn pages together, like if she tried hard enough, she could undo what already happened. And in that moment, everything inside me shifted. Not anger, clarity. She told me what happened. It was simple. She reached for something. Her elbow slipped. The laptop fell. That's it. That's the entire story. But the reaction? That told me everything I needed to know. Now here's where it gets worse. Because what happened next wasn't about her anymore. It was about what they believed about me. I called my parents. Because that's what you do when something doesn't make sense. You go to the people who are supposed to make it make sense. And what I got back was silence. Then hesitation. Then something colder. Agreement. They didn't ask what happened. They didn't ask how she was. They asked what I was going to do about it. Let that sink in. A child gets screamed at, and the question becomes, how are you going to fix this? Have you ever realized? You weren't being supported. You were being evaluated. That's the moment everything changes. Not when someone hurts you, but when they feel justified doing it. I didn't argue. Because arguing means you still believe they're open to understanding. They weren't. They had already decided who I was, and more importantly, who my daughter would become. So I stopped explaining, and I started thinking. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat in the dark, and I asked myself one question. What if I let this go? What happens next? And the answer was immediate. It happens again. Maybe not the same way, but the same pattern. Different situation. Same conclusion. She's the problem. And eventually, she got it from you. That was the moment I changed roles. I wasn't trying to fix relationships anymore. I was protecting someone who couldn't afford to be misunderstood. Now, here's where most people expect emotion. Anger, reaction, confrontation. That's not what happened. I did something much more dangerous. I became precise. I started looking at everything differently, not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as someone outside the system. And once you step outside, you start seeing things clearly. Who gets protected, who gets blamed, who gets forgiven, and why. And here's the truth. The problem wasn't that day. That day just exposed it. So I didn't react. I prepared. Because truth, without timing, gets ignored. But truth, placed at the right moment, becomes impossible to deny. I hired someone, not to find anything new, just to confirm what I already suspected. And what came back was more than enough. Affairs, financial lies, a life built on appearances, held together by things no one wanted to question, especially the people who were funding it. Now here's the twist. I didn't create a problem. I revealed one. That was already there. I organized everything, every detail, every timeline, every piece of truth that had been hidden behind convenience. And I waited, because timing matters more than truth. When I finally acted, it didn't look like revenge. It looked like information. Delivered quietly, directly, without emotion. No accusations, no confrontation, just facts. Placed exactly where they couldn't be ignored. And then I stepped back. What happened next wasn't something I controlled. It unfolded exactly the way truth always does when people are forced to face it. Conversations changed. Confidence disappeared. Certainty turned into doubt. The same people who judged me were suddenly trying to understand what they missed. And here's the part no one expects. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel powerful. I felt done. Because the goal was never to win. It was to stop being part of something that required me to lose. I focused on what actually mattered: my daughter, her safety, her understanding of the world, a world where mistakes don't define you, and where love doesn't come with conditions. Time passed, things settled. Consequences did what they always do. When no one interferes with them, they landed exactly where they needed to. I saw them again later, and I waited to feel something. Anger, resentment, anything. But there was nothing. And that's when I realized something. The real ending isn't when they understand what they did. It's when you no longer need them to. So no, this wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was alignment, choosing what matters, and acting like it does. Because once you do that, everything changes. Not loudly, not instantly, but permanently. And if you're in a situation right now where something feels wrong, where you keep explaining yourself, hoping someone will finally see your side, maybe this is the moment you stop, not reacting, not arguing, just stepping back and asking a better question. What happens if I choose myself and protect what matters, no matter who disagrees? Because once you do that, you don't just change the outcome, you change the rules. And people who were comfortable judging you will finally have to face something much harder: the truth.